We are live? Yes. Good morning. This is our third Baltic Talk. And here today is with us Ida Carlén, who is our Biodiversity and Nature Conservation Officer. And we will talk about our little friend behind us, the harbour porpoise. So we will start talking about, in general, who is this animal? What can you tell us about it?
So the harbour porpoise is a small cetacean. So it's a whale. People, they look quite a lot like dolphins, but they are dolphin relatives, so to speak. They're a small mammal. They breathe air just like us, give birth to live young, and they suckle their young underwater. Quite complicated. And they use echolocation to find their food. So they use sound underwater to get echoes back from their environment. This is how they find their prey. Yes, and it's the only cetacean resident in the Baltic Sea. It's the only whale in the Baltic Sea.
Our only whale.
Yes.
Okay. And so why is so special this animal for the Baltic Sea?
So in the Baltic Sea, there are very few porpoises left. The Baltic Sea harbour porpoise is a separate population. It's genetically and morphologically different than other harbour porpoise populations. So they look slightly different, very, very slightly. You don't see it, but if you do measurements, you can see that they're slightly different.
Okay.
And there are only a few hundred left. So we really need to protect this population to make sure that we have porpoises in the Baltic Sea in the future.
Yeah, and so why it's so difficult to see them? Because there are so few, or there are other reasons? I mean,
so very few people around the Baltic Sea knows that we actually have a whale in the Baltic Sea, and that's mainly because there's so few, so you rarely see them out at sea. During summer, when most people are actually out at sea, the porpoises stay quite far offshore. There's a core area south of the island of Gotland. And this area is so far offshore that very few people go there. So you don't see them. There are very few. So we're trying to raise awareness of the Baltic Sea harbour porpoise.
Okay, so the next question, natural question is why are so endangered? I mean, what are the threats to this? Animal?
So historically, porpoises were hunted. It's said that Copenhagen was lit by oil from harbour porpoises during a few hundred years. And then in the last half century, so since the 1950s approximately, we had an introduction of a lot of environmental contaminants in the Baltic Sea, which impedes reproduction. We also had an introduction of nylon gill nets, which causes bycatch. So the porpoises get stuck in the net and cannot come to the surface to breathe, and then they suffocate and die. Actually, a porpoise caught in a net doesn't drown because they have such a strong reflex to not breathe water. So what they do is they just shut down and don't breathe. And so that they die. And these days we also have an increasing problem of underwater noise. And porpoises are quite shy. They are dependent on their ability to echolocate, to find prey. And if there's a lot of disturbance in the water,
can you give us some example of underwater noise?
So noise from ships, for example, engine noise, propeller noise, echo sounders. Echo sounders that we humans use to see the depth when we drive our boat are in the exact same frequency as harbour porpoise clicks. So it's a problem. It masks porpoise sounds. And if the sounds are too loud, they can be very disturbing. So it can disturb natural behaviors that are necessary for the porpoises. And also, if the sounds are really loud, like explosions or sounds that we use to investigate the seafloor, they can actually destroy the hearing of a porpoise. or even kill them at close range. But so these are quite big issues that we need to deal with somehow to save.
Okay, and maybe we can say something about if I see an arbor porpoise on the sea, what I should do.
Yes,
because
so all countries have reporting websites, or almost all countries at least. So there are websites where you can report sightings, and it's very helpful for scientists if you report if you've seen a porpoise. Alive, but also dead, because if you find a dead porpoise on the beach, it can provide very important samples for scientists. And since there are so few porpoises in the Baltic Sea, scientists get very few samples to work with. So all samples of dead porpoises are very important to collect.
Okay, and we can see that we have, maybe you can say some words about our brochure.
Yes, so this is the CCB brochure about harbor porpoises. And in here there is a list of where in each country.
It's impossible to see, but you can find our brochure on our website.
Yes,
so
it's available on the web. And there is a list on where in each country you can contact someone if you see a porpoise.
Okay, so read our brochure, download it, it's on our website. There are also other information.
Yes, there's a lot of information about porpoises and where they are and how many and basic information. And it's available in almost all Baltic Sea languages.
Yes.
So I'm currently
here. I have the English version. You have the Swedish, but there are also in Russian, Polish, Lithuanian, German, all the languages.
Yes.
So it would be easy.
Find it on the web.
Yeah. And so next time we will talk about how to protect the Baltic Harbour porpoise. You can just want to say something to.
So at CCB we try to work to protect harbor porpoises. And there's a lot of things that needs to be done. We have recently designated marine protected areas for porpoises in the Baltic Sea, and we need to make sure that these areas have a management that's useful.
So we will talk more about these marine protected areas, international cooperation.
Yes.
And so if you have any questions or comments about, if you want to know more about this little friend, you are covering in
the little friend is behind me.
Yeah.
There he is.
So just write us and see you next time on our Baltic Talk. Thank you, Ida.
Thank you.
And see you next time. Thank you for watching us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.